Hello friends, welcome back. In this video, I will walk you through data bindings concepts in detail. We will see some good examples so that you will be able to utilize this stuff in the online course enrollment full stack development video series. So without delay, come let's get started. Okay, so I'm presenting the code that is useful for the data bindings concepts. So there are four types of data bindings: interpolations, property binding, event binding, two-way data binding. Alright, all of these concepts are very essential. They are used across any of the pages that you use. So we will talk about one by one with some couple of examples. Alright, so the first one is the interpolation example. So I have a component called data binding component. You can just create whatever you want, but I'm going to give you the whole stuff, like the whole code, so don't worry about it. All what I have is, I have something called the first name variable, which is of type string, and I have also assigned some name. Last name, again a string, some name, a variable called item counts, a variable called price, a variable called quantity. All these three are types number type, okay, which means we can assign only the numbers, like it could be a full number or it could be a fraction number. So we have 5 properties, right? What we are going to do is, if you look at in the left side, under the interpolation example, I have full name, total items and price, but there is no data here. So interpolation are nothing but one-way binding. Interpolation is used to display data from the component in the HTML. So I'm going to expand this and go to the HTML. Let's remove this. Let's do this live. Okay, so don't look at the other stuff, but just stay focused here. For example, here I can say learn smart coding. You can see automatically it's built and coming, the data is coming, but I don't want to hard code it. So interpolations are used like this. You open double parenthesis and close double parenthesis. Inside this, whatever you type, right? If you are typing something that is related on the component, which is like variables, then it will evaluate. For example, first name automatically is coming. So the moment I type first name, you see this, the first name started coming. So if I give a space here, there will be a space and then there will be a learn. Now, and then I want the last name. So again, same last name. So what happens? It automatically binded. So this is one-way binding. So we are taking something from component into the HTML. Similarly, if now by this time you know how to do this, right? Total items, right? So items count, and then here, okay, so let's go, I forgot the name. Okay, so we have price and quantity. Okay, so let's go here. What we will do is, let's go to the HTML. Let's remove this price. So we can also do some calculation. Price into quantity. That will give you the total price. Great. So basically, when you do something inside this interpolation, it will evaluate. Angular will evaluate. These are all variables, so it is basically evaluating. Here, it's an expression. So this variable is a number into another number, that is evaluating the expression and giving the final result here. Okay, so this is called one-way binding, or also called as interpolations. Alright, the second one is property binding. Alright, so property binding, we need to use something called this bracket. Okay, so the square bracket. So property binding, what is property binding? So property binding is used to bind the property of a DOM. DOM means document object model. So let me repeat one more time. Used to bind the property of a DOM element to a component field. It means this is component field. Field is nothing but a variable. Anything that is there, a variable, or in other words, it's called a field, which is in the component. If you want to bind that inside the property of a DOM. So what is property of a DOM? DOM means the whole HTML, right? Document object model. And if you take any tag, for example, here div tag, right? So this is a tag. If you do a space here, for example, h2 tag has some element called, see, inner HTML. Inner HTML is a property. Okay, class is a property. Anything that is there within that element is called property. For example, in image, alt is a property, something called source is a property. They're all property. How do you assign a value to the property of a DOM? That is what this property binding comes into picture. Okay, so what we are going to do is we are going to do something here. So let's go to the binding and then see what we have. So let's remove this. All right, so we have something called, we have three variables or nothing but the field is disabled, which is a boolean type and set to true by default. There is an image URL, it's of a string type, which is setting a real the URL of an image. Okay, and again an is active field of boolean type, which is true. Great, so we have three things. What are we going to do with these three things? Let's see. Let's go back to this and you can also see what is going to happen here. Okay, now the first one is the button. For example, if I use a property called disabled, I am actually hard coding the button is disabled. You see the button got disabled, correct? But if you want to bind a property value to like the field value to the property of a DOM, all what you have to do is you need to use the square bracket and then use the property. In this case, this is what called property binding. Now we are saying, hey, this value is determined by is disabled property. Because is disabled property is true, this is getting true and this is getting set. Let's say, for example, if I set this to false, you can see what happens here. This gets enabled because disabled is not true, right? So that is how it works. Now similarly, let's go back to the next example. Here we have something called image. We need to set the source, right? So property binding, I open the square bracket src and then I say image URL. The moment I say image URL, we need to go to this data binding. Great, I got an image automatically added here because the URL, the image URL, for example, if you wanted to see what is the image URL, you use interpolation and you put the property value, it shows you the evaluation, right? Just now we learned. So this URL is being taken and put into this one. That's why you see this image, correct? Great, so you got two things. Now the last one is the status. All right, so the next important thing here itself, the third example is there is a default active class in Bootstrap. Okay, so if I put an active class inside a class, you see this, it got changed into some highlighting color. So basically what you can do is you can assign this active, you can dynamically bring this active class by using a property. So I'm opening the data, the property binding, and I'm saying class dot active. Here active is the actual class, the CSS class, inbuilt class. Okay, so we are saying class dot active equal to is active. Is active is a boolean that is set to true, which means what it will do is, because this is set to true, it will bring this class automatically here, and that's the reason why when you go here you see this one. For example, if I set this to false, this color will go away because now there is no active class set. One more time, right? So you got to know what we are doing. All right, so we will set this to true. Okay, great. Now we learned interpolation, we learned property binding. The third and fourth is even binding and two-way binding. So let's concentrate on even binding here. Okay, so even binding used to bind the events like click, double click, mouse over, mouse move, whatsoever events to a method in the component. What does it mean is we have something called methods. Methods are nothing but functions. Okay, so in JavaScript they're called functions. We can also say methods. Okay, so what we are going to do is we have three methods. Handle click is a function or a method that what it does is it has a property like click message. Click message is currently set to string nothing. Okay, whenever this function is called, we are setting some data. Similarly, on input, there's a function. On mouse over is a function. On input, whatever is coming, its value is set to input message. On this one, we are setting this message to a mouse's hover, something like that. Okay, so we have three functions. That's what you need to know. Now let's go back to the actual data binding example. So event binding, sorry. So event binding, so let me explain one more time. Events are nothing but an action is triggered based on the user's action. Okay, for example, if there is a button, for example, let's say here's a button, right? In general, you have something called click event, like when you click one time, and then there's something called double click event, DBL, double click. Okay, so they are all events. Similarly, mouse move, mouse enter, like whenever you bring the mouse or those kind of actions. Now for event binding, what you need to understand is you need to open the parenthesis like this and then put the event. For example, I wanted to have a click event. Whenever button is clicked, I want to fire something, like I want to invoke a function. That is what we have to do. So what we will call here is, we will call something called handle click, and then because it is a function, you need to just use the function like this. Okay, so let's go and do that example. Let's go here. You see this click me right now. If I click whenever the user is clicking this handle click, the button is clicked, I wanted to show some message. This is the click message, right, where we assigned something. So if I click, this message came. Great. So based on this event, something got changed, and that because this is changed, automatically this binding got into picture. The Angular evaluated started giving a response here. Okay, now second thing is input. So here what we will do is, there is a default event called input, input. So if you use input event, we are saying on input, we are calling on input, and then we are sending the event, whatever is triggered here. So we are sending the event. So this is done. What we will do is, we will show the message whatever the user is doing. So here we will do the interpolation, so which means when you do something here, for example, it's fun to learn Angular. As I type, the events are fired, this message is getting with the new value, and that is what it's coming here. Okay, this is called event binding. Great. Another example, for example, the next example that we can say is here, right? When you hover here, so on mouse hover, call on mouse hover event, and we will also show what is in the, like what is happening. So here there's a message. So for example, if I hover here, you see this mouse is hover, it came, right? Now let's say we have another function called mouse is not on it. So mouse leave, let's say mouse leave, or mouse leave. Okay, so for mouse leave, so let's go back to the component. Let's do one more thing. So here we will say okay, so here what we are saying, the same thing, we are putting a different message. So let's say hover, you can see mouse is hover because we are still hovering on it. If I leave, it should go away, and it didn't go because there were two brackets by mistake. So let's remove this, it should be only one. Okay, let's go back to data binding. hover, okay, we are here, and then leave. See, hover, mouse left the element, mouse left the element. You see this? If I'm here, this is coming. If I leave, this is coming. So this is called even binding. Okay. The last one is the two-way data binding. Two-way binding is used for syncing data between the component and the template, especially in the forms. Whenever we use forms, like you want to type something, it will be updated in both component as well as in the element, like in the HTML. So let's take an example of that. So for two-way binding, you should remember how to use it. So for two-way binding, it is an input element where you can use the two-way binding. For this, what you have to do is, it's a combination of the second and third, which is the property binding and the even binding. So you open the bracket and then you open the parenthesis. So it is also called football, ball in the football code, whatever it is, right? So it looks like a ball inside the goal. So football goal, you can remember like that. So here what we will do is we have something called ng model. Okay, so we need to use ng model, and then you can assign a variable here. Username is a variable that we assign, and here currently error is shown because you can see can't bind to ng model because it just says that it don't know what it is. Okay, which means we're missing something. So what will happen is, you remember this, whenever you use two-way bindings, you need to use the form module. Okay, after you've used the form module, like you have to import the form module. See, the error went away, Angular started loading. So now here's the thing. So if I type Karthik is, okay, so I typed, so it got updated. What it got updated? The username got updated, but it is not shown because we don't have such HTML. So let's bring up that HTML. So what we will do is we will type it here. Okay, so hello followed by whatever you type here. So for example, Karthik is learn smart coding. See, whatever I type, it is coming here. Similarly, for example, like I said, it's a two-way binding, right? So let's go here, let's change this. So because I have already assigned this is binded to a input property, this text box already got this value. And if I change this, obviously this got changed. That's why it is displaying different here. Okay, so that's how the two-way property bindings work. Now let's take a look at the other example also. So let's go back to the code. Okay, so the next is we have something called input. Again, input, it's a type of checkbox. So here we will assign same thing, like we will have a different name. So ng model inside a square bracket and a parenthesis is checked is the property. Okay, by default it is false. Okay, so what we are going to do is we are going to see what is happening. So for example, checkbox is, we are using the interpolation, we are doing an evaluation. So if the checkbox true, if this variable is true, say checked. If this variable is false, say not checked. Now let's say if I do something here, you see this is getting evaluated and the variable is getting set. Similarly, if you go and do a default here to true, what will happen? You can see here it gets checked automatically, right? So that's called two-way binding. One more last option is that we will take a look at this also. So let's go here. So here in select, what we will do, we need to get the value of the select statement, like whatever you select, right? So ng model, we will say selected option. Okay, if the selected option is 1, like here, if you look at this, here the selected option is option 1. So because of that, what is happening? The first one is getting selected automatically. Okay, and if you change, for example, let's also print this. Okay, so it will be easy to check. So you selected the selected option. See, if I change this is also getting changed. That's how two-way binding works. So I hope you enjoyed this video. In this video, we just learned about complete data binding concepts: interpolation, property binding, even binding, and two-way binding. These concepts we will apply in online course enrollment UI full stack development video. So don't worry, next video we will take a look at the directives, all types of directives. So stay tuned. So if you like this video, do subscribe to my channel, leave a comment and do a thumbs up on my video. I'll see you in the next video, guys. Bye bye. Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more tech tutorials. And don't forget to hit the bell icon to get notified when we post new videos. If you have any questions or suggestions, leave them in the comments below. Happy coding!